has adopted a hybrid meeting policy where we will meet both in person and virtually. All committee meetings will require an in-person forum to come to order and conduct business. Board members are expected to attend meetings in person unless they have a disability or in extraordinary circumstances as defined by the New York State Open Meetings Law. Excused committee members and members of the public will still be able to participate virtually. Committee members who are joining via Zoom must leave their cameras on. We encourage members of the public to join virtually. The MCB4 hybrid policy can be found on our website. And tonight's meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. So we've got everyone here tonight, and I think we're just going to launch into our first presentation. We've got Alfred Kurland from Vote 16, the Vote 16 project. So whenever you're ready.
Okay, well, thank you. It's a pleasure seeing such a robust, turnout for a February committee meeting. Thank you. Yeah, so, my name is Al Kurland, and my background in presenting this issue on lowering the voting age to 16 springs partially from research I conducted in the issue of places where the lowering age has already been voted successfully, and also challenging stereotypes about the lack of capacity or the undercapacity of 16 and 17-year-olds to be able to handle the responsibility of voting. And then in addition to the research, I'm also a 40-year veteran of working with, leading, and advocating for teen civics programs, starting with a small grassroots program in Washington Heights, which is still around today, called the 280 Dreamers. It was founded as a scouting and camping program, but they quickly adopted civics and community service into the program as a prerequisite for doing the program. And the way that program became successful is it incorporated a lot of teen leadership, both into the everyday programming at the after-school center or state camps, where teenagers became junior leaders that were very well respected by their younger peers, and also by training teenagers to become advocates for community issues. So, for instance, at the time we had a public park at 164th and Edgecombe Avenue, which was basically used as a dumping ground for used car parts and old tires and what have you. And then in the later hours, it was used as a shooting gallery for people that were using and selling drugs. So, our scouting and explorer programs adopted the park, launched a campaign to try to get the city to pay more attention. This was in a neglected area of Washington Heights, and we felt it was certainly not getting the same attention as parks in more affluent areas. And we had some of the explorers testify at Community Board 12 in Manhattan, and they gave a very enthusiastic response. They wrote letters to the precinct and sanitation and parks, and actually got them to at least pay more attention. It became not just a multi-year, but a multi-decade campaign, but it finally got included in the capital budget. And now if you walk into that park today, you would never know, what a nightmare it had been. It's a beautiful, place to go, and people are proud to be associated with that park. So I adopted that same practice and philosophy with subsequent youth programs I ran. So not to keep it too long, I'll just give two examples. One was something called the Ivy League Uptown Wings, which was a girls' sports and education program. Because what we found was there were plenty of playing fields and basketball courts for guys, but very little in basketball and almost nothing, for outdoor sports and softball. So we organized initially like a softball league, and we got a couple of fields and had the girls start playing, got some recognition by the school board and the community board. And ultimately we incorporated a Title IX component, an educational training program, where the teenage girls actually became proponents of letting people know what Title IX was and why it was important. And, you know, educating the parents, educating the community, and educating their peers. And out of that organization, we also developed something called Female Finesse, which was an all-girls leadership group, you know, within the Ivy League itself, that helped put together workshops, partnering both with the Girl Scouts Citywide Council and also the Women's Sports Foundation. You know, so we became even smarter and you know, promoting Title IX and prejudice and stereotypes about girls and women in sports.
That's.
And then my final venture was it's within the Police Athletic League. For part of my tenure, they put me in charge of the Teen Employment Department, which, in addition to getting people ready for the world of work, was also an educational support program and had a civics component where we had 19 sites around the city. And each site would organize a cohort of teens who would become advocates for an issue of their own choosing. And then once they battled each other and decided on one primary issue, then it was their responsibility to do the research to justify taking a position. Anything as simple as changing the school menu to things that are more complex, like gentrification and relationships between youth and police. And their responsibility was to do the research, develop allies and enablers around the city, and then do a public presentation at their local community center, you know, after a semester of you know, learning about civics. So what that experience did for me is it challenged even my beliefs. I was sympathetic, I would say, as opposed to empathetic about the, you know, the intelligence and the capabilities of young teenagers who are becoming organized and getting things done if they're given the proper supports. And it motivated me when I found out about lowering the voting age to 16 on boards to do research on these capacities. Yeah, and what I found was two things. One was the educational and the psychological research found very, very little or scant evidence that a 16-year-old was any different than an 18-year-old or even a 20-year-old in their cognitive capacities. Or even in the motivation to become involved. But what was lacking was the opportunities to be educated in issues and the invitations to become involved. So it was really like a social problem, you know, more than trying to peg it on teenagers having a fault of their own. And the other thing that I found through the research, mostly to someone named Siegel, he wrote a book called Adolescent 2.0, is when he did international research, he found that in many societies that were not as quote unquote developed as Western societies, many of the negative social indicators that we associate, you know, by experience with teens, either did not exist or were very scant in these societies. And that the creation of these conditions was as much a social construct as it was because, you know, obviously, you know, teens have developing brains and they have raging hormones and all that stuff.
Right.
You can't deny it. I have the bruises on my wrist to prove that there were all the teens I tried to strangle when they exacerbated.
So this all brought you to vote 16.
So running vote 16, I ran into these two ladies, you know, Future Voters of America. And initially the proposal was to lower the voting age to 16. They did this in 2006. It went to the city council and it went nowhere. It had Gail Brewer and a couple of other council people. So Gail Brewer came back to the next Congress and said, why don't we try a compromise? And there were offered some compromises and they voted to choose the lower the voting age to 16 in community boards, major mandate, and, you know, the rest of it, because it took 7 years. You know, a lot of people thought it would be a slam dunk.
Wow.
But what we found is something that's been true for a lot of other groups that have tried to, you know, fight for civil rights and social justice, is that even when science found out they were in error with certain assumptions and corrects themselves, public opinion takes a long time to correct itself.
Okay.
Yeah, so one example is, a lot of legislation was passed in the early 1900s, anti-immigrant, very nativist. Initially, the scientific community supported those beliefs. Then when they did more rigorous research and found out that they were an error, they came out with research debunking it. I don't know if it's even changed up to date with a lot of our population.
So, sorry, with the legislation, so I think there'll be questions from the committee, but there's state legislation, and could you talk
Right.
maybe about what you're involved in and sort of the sponsors of that?
Very good man, he told me to, thank you for the history. So there is legislation in Albany. The lead sponsor in the state senate is Brad Hoyman Siegel. And the lead sponsor in the assembly is Robert Carroll. He's from Prospect Heights and Brooklyn. And initially, they each had one piece of legislation that called upon lowering the voting age to 16 by changing election law. And by introducing the course I was mentioning earlier, 8 hours of civics training for every high school student in New York State. And the legislation will cover all of New York State. It's not just for New York City. But what they found when they sent it to the law committee was they couldn't change election law unless they first changed the New York State Constitution. So they had to, that's why each chamber had to introduce a second bill. So that's where it sits in the state legislature. They're both in committee at this point. Because the other thing I found is you can have wonderful legislation sitting on the desk up in Albany on someone's committee. That doesn't mean it's going anywhere.
Right.
As FDR said, you want something done, make me do it. And so we're trying our best, to make that happen.
Okay.
So approaches first was to go to community boards because we have been associated with that community board initiative.
Right.
And we've gone to 9 boards. 2 boards are still kind of percolating, boards 9 and 10 in Upper Manhattan. One of them said, well, we feel really conflicted, we'll let you know. The other said they felt really favorable, but it might take some time, to go to the full board. We also have a community board 1 in the Bronx, the youth committee approved. So I actually have to go testify on February 29th, to that board. But we do have board 7, just approved about a week ago at the general meeting. And we also have boards 11 and 12 in Manhattan, boards 2 and 4 in the Bronx, and board 8 in Brooklyn. Haven't gotten to Queens yet, but we'll get there.
Okay.
At the same time, a lesson we learned from the community board campaign, once we found out that only the state could decide, about community board public officers, they're also the only body that could decide on whether we can lower the voting age. But one of the things they told us that it would be a good idea to go to the city council and get a resolution of support. Because that will show, kind of home rule. If the
Right.
city really wants it,
Yes.
that will increase the probability of us supporting it.
Right.
So, right now, there's actually 2 city council resolutions. Because they decided that one of them has a resolution to support changing the state constitution, that's Sean Abreu from Washington Heights.
Okay.
And the other, to change election law and introduce civics in the schools, and that's Gail Brewer.
Yeah, all right, so you're on board now.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I'm sorry, the first one is the election age, or the voting age, and the second one is the civics classes, basically?
no, they're both voting age, but different laws have to be changed.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, one changes something called election law, and the other changes the New York State Constitution. So apparently you have to change the New York State Constitution,
No, I'm sorry, I meant at the city council.
but the city council, one is supporting only change the New York State Constitution. That's Sean Abreu. And then Gail Brewer's bill is changing both election law and introducing 8 hours of civics for every high school in New York State.
Got
A little complicated, but
Right.
Do you have any materials that you wanted to hand out to the committee?
yeah, I could leave, I wasn't sure whether I successfully emailed stuff to board 4. Probably not,
I don't-
especially in your
Yeah, our
place.
district manager's not here, so if we
Yeah.
can get it printed out, so, but that's totally fine.
Right,
Yeah, we could, look at it at some other point, but, if you're okay with it, I'm sure we'll have some questions for you. So
mhm.
maybe we can, did you have anything else that you wanted to add before we go into the question portion?
Yeah, just, yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up, I think, from the community board perspective. You know, focusing on the state and, legislation, the city council resolutions.
Right, right.
Yeah.
All right, so, before we go on to the question then, so are you looking for support for the bill, which bills, which city council bill, or both, or what?
Yeah, both, it will be both, state bills and
Right.
both, city council bills.
Okay.
And, what some boards have done is, only two boards have done this, actually, they created a resolution. And then they also sent a letter to, the lead sponsors. You know, the two in the city council and the two in the, legislature.
Mhm.
But most of the boards have just done letters of support, not the resolution. So each board, has their own path.
Right, right. So I should have said in this beginning, but, I'm Josephine Ishmael, one of the co-chairs, is my co-chair, Matt Green.
Okay.
And, okay, so the first question I have is, with the Gail Brewer's, the, whatever, she's putting for city council. When you say that you have to take 8 hours of civics class, does that mean that everyone who would be eligible at 16 to vote has to take these civic courses, or once you lower the voting age to 16, everybody at 16 gets to vote?
Yeah, it will be every high school student, age 16 and 16, 17. I mean, what the way the law is written is that every high school student will get 1 8-hour course. So I'm assuming they would introduce it at age 16. But I don't know for a fact that they wouldn't try to introduce it at 15 to get them prepared. The legislation just is not language specific on that.
Okay, all right. And then I'm curious to know, is this like, are there other countries that have voting ages starting at the ages, just off the top of your head, do you know? I'm
So off the top of my head, I'll keep it short, 17 countries internationally, Argentina, Ecuador, Brazil, and Europe, it's not countries, but it's provinces. So the Isle of Man, sections of Germany and Scotland. And in the United States, it's a oddity to me, there are 7 cities that have already lowered the voting age,
Okay,
6 in Maryland. Because what happened there is one did it and then the others
I
followed.
see.
So Tacoma Park and Hyatt Park in Maryland, and just recently, Burlington, Vermont.
Hmm.
But San Francisco tried in 2016. It's different in California, they had to put it up as a referendum. And it lost 52% to 48% among the general population. When they introduced it again in 2020, it lost 50.9% to, I think, 49.1. It was less than, or close to less than 1%.
Yeah.
Very, very close. But they did lower the voting age for school board members
Hmm.
to 16 in both San Francisco and Berkeley. And finally, Culver City, California had a referendum in 2020 and lost by 16 votes.
Mhm. Okay. Do you have some questions? Did you have any?
I'll turn it over to the committee.
Yeah, I have, go for it.
First, I want to thank you for Title IX work. I was a Title IX baby. I went
Oh,
to
you
school,
were?
yep, I went to school for free because of Title IX to
Oh,
college. So thank you
okay.
very much. You're speaking my language when you said
Okay.
Title IX. But I do want to ask, what is the political opposition that you're finding? What are the hurdles?
Okay, so it's interesting because among community boards, it's surprising, I shouldn't say surprisingly, it's unexpectedly supportive. So like Community Board 12 in Manhattan, the voting in favor was like 33 to 5.
Hmm.
Yeah, before I made the presentation, I was figuring if we did 2 to 1, I'd be very, very happy.
But I mean, getting to like the legislative level.
So, okay, so the legislative level, Brad Homan has 4 co-sponsors. Robert C. Carroll has 13 co-sponsors. In the city council, what they've done is they've asked us to meet with their offices and come up with a strategy for getting people to sign on board. Now, do know.
But what are the reasons that people are given to?
Okay, so that's the other aspect of it. So I say most of the reasons people give are prejudicial in character. They cite a lot of negative stereotypes about young people.
Mhm.
So for instance, and this was actually a public officer involved, but then not even narrow it down, who told me I would never support this because my 16-year-old child could not handle it. And I found that to be, truthfully, like a little bit insulting, because if someone said, well, because I know an XYZ, a black or Latino person, I couldn't handle it, if you would sue the whole group of people based on that one person.
Mhm.
And then other people, they go by the generalizations. So they all wear their pants, down to their knees. That's kind of their generalizing. And the final thing, arguments about hormones and underdeveloped cerebral cortex.
Mhm.
Wow, okay.
So, Siegel, the research he did the meta-analysis of 30 or 40 different studies. And he said he didn't find a single study that showed a causative relationship between hormones with the cerebral cortex and cognitive reasoning necessary to vote.
Okay.
This correlation, which is associated, but it's not causative.
Well, I'm guessing around the country, it's also political. And I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
so I think now you have a supermajority in New York, it shouldn't, those barriers might be easier to.
Yeah, we're anticipating in the city council, it should pass fairly easily. We expect a lot of success at the community board levels because of the margins of votes of support that we've gotten at almost all the boards, say 2. 7-2, so we're confident, but at the same time weary because
Yeah,
these are strange times,
right. Maria, did you have a question?
I did, actually, Leslie asked one of them. I was wondering, I was curious about the conflict. You said MCB4 is conflicted, so I was curious about that. You answered that. You suggested a book. You said Adolescence 2.0. Is it Teens 2.0?
Teens 2.0.
Okay. And I already looked at the book and I see I can read some of it, so I'm right. I wanted to ask you, is there any info or research or what's the feedback or I don't know what other word I'm looking for, but of the cities that have lowered the voting age?
Yes, thank you, good question. So there's an organization called Generation Citizen. They're the organization that they do what Future Voters used to do. They run action civics programs in the schools. And they also have a component that they call Vote 16 USA. And if you go on their site, Generation Citizen Vote USA, you can find a white paper, I think it was written in 2020, that does kind of a cross-section level overview, both of international and national results of the effects of lowering the voting age. And the second is a study from the League of Women Voters, the chapter in Maine. Because what happened there is one city in Maine voted to lower the voting age, and the governor vetoed it, not on the merits of the argument for lowering the age, but on the position that one city did not have the right to lower the vote, it had to be the whole state. So that chapter of the League of Women Voters decided to commission a study on the efficacy of lowering the voting age. And about a 110-page study, and what they found was there are no substantial even hardly any arguments at all against lowering the voting age, and they voted to support lowering the voting age in May. So those are the 2 studies that I know of. There's a third, much smaller study. The lead author is Oosterhoff from the Montana State. He did it in collaboration with three other professors, I think from UCLA and Rutgers. And he had the same conclusions. You know, that a lot of the opposition is based either on, you know, the false reading of scientific studies or stereotypes.
And you said Generation Citizen Vote 16 or Vote USA, sorry.
116 USA.
Oh, both. Words, okay.
Because they partnered with different cities like San Francisco and Culver City. Yeah, supporting their efforts. So we in New York are just one of their targets.
Okay.
Two questions. One, just to clarify, the state bill would be just for New York City elections.
No,
Is that right? It
no
would be,
state.
it would be the whole state.
Whole state, right?
Got it. Because you mentioned home rule, but really the movement, one single bill for the entire state.
Right.
And have there been any examples of other age changes besides 16? Has anybody done 15 or 17? Is there a reason why 18 to 16 is the number?
Some of the European provinces have done 17 as opposed to 16. There's like 3 or 4 of them, but all the rest have done 16.
Even
Is that-
numbers, Charlie, even numbers.
Couple questions, so. I guess, the first question is, what is the hoped for timing at the state level? I'm assuming that it wouldn't be in place in time to somehow change it for the November elections. Is
Yeah.
that- Yeah,
So that's a good question because I neglected to mention that part. So it would require passage in the state legislature as step number 1. And state number 2 is they would have to put it up to the general public, you know, for a referendum vote. And then if the public voted yes, they would have to have a second session of the state legislature that would have to vote yes again. So 3 steps, 2 and 3 could conceivably be in, you know, the same calendar year. But step 1 would probably be only maybe in 2024.
okay. Question number 2, and if the city council resolution is passed, is it anything other than like celebratory or indicative or something? I mean, it's not like people in 16-year-olds in New York City could start voting, right? Because it would
Right.
still be controlled at the state level.
Yeah, it would just be a message to the state legislature that the city council supports it. And yeah, what some state legislators told us with the community council bill was it shows an element of home rule support.
Okay, and then, last but not least, it's sort of the flip side, which is like, so why? I mean, I know it sounds like the argument is, well, there is no difference between 16 and 18-year-olds, but that doesn't seem like the most persuasive, exciting reason to support something, right? So what is is there a feeling that this will help engage civically our younger people? Is it that we want to change? I guess I'm just wondering why.
Right, and that's a good question. So there is research on that, because what people did is they studied cities in Europe and they studied cities in America, you know, in Maryland. And what they found both in Europe and Maryland was similar results when they compared the turnout rates of 16-year-olds as opposed to the turnout rate of people voting for the first time at the age of 18. In the initial elections for each, the rate of turnout was 4 times greater among 16-year-olds than 18-year-olds. And then when they measured the results in subsequent elections, you didn't maintain that 4-to-1 ratio, but it was still, you know, quite an impressive ratio of improved performance. And what people hypothesized is when you introduce it at the age of 16, and people are able to vote in subsequent elections, you're establishing a habit of the heart,
habits, yeah.
a voting habit, which is a bit easy to establish for 16 or 17-year-olds still in school. than an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old who's, what am I doing with my life?
Or who may be away at college in a
Way,
different stage
right.
and trying to figure that stuff out, yeah. Interesting.
Good question, really good question. Wendy?
Yeah, I think actually that last question was kind of what I had on my mind, because what I was thinking about is the difference between 16 and 18-year-olds. One of them, at least in the US, is for a lot of kids who go off to college, that is a challenge. Because sometimes they turn 18 when they get to their new college, and what do you do, and the absentee voting and all of that. So I think there is a strength to establishing that early.
How are the kids, I mean, how are the 16-year-olds feeling about it? Like, you guys, I imagine you've been in the schools, like, I honestly was hoping some like 16-year-olds would show up today, you know, like, I know that you said we were in the process of training,
We respect your age and wisdom. however.
yes, absolutely, but it would be nice also to hear from the 16-year-olds who are going to be affected by
Right.
this.
Yeah, so we have, some 16-year-olds that already, are active in, an organization called Why Vote New York. And they've, you know, they came to one of our committee meetings and they expressed a very, very strong interest in becoming involved in the Vote 16 campaign. And they've done a little bit, you know, they've given us ideas. But in terms of obligating to, like a speaking engagement, it's been a little bit difficult. Because they're already doing speaking engagements on behalf of, Why Vote New York. And they organize, an annual conference at the Manhattan Borough President's Office, where they send out surveys to high school students on the most important issues in their lives. They itemize them, and then they choose the top 5 and they do research on it. And they do an advocacy campaign to elected officials. You know, at that meeting, so it's a lot of work. On top of all the work they, you know, have to hire. A lot of these students are typically, you know, AP4 students and stuff, so we want to get them involved. We have to be careful with that, asking to put them in situations because they feel like, well, maybe they should be there. You know, they commit to something or take the time away, you know, from critical stuff. So, you know, we have a cohort, say 20, 25 students overall that express interest. You know, selecting the students that are most able to, you know, afford that extra time. Yeah, everyone has to be well trained in the advocacy patient, familiar with the issues. But some students have more time than others.
Was there someone from, the senator's office that was going to?
I looked, yeah, they said they were gonna attend, but I don't see, I think it was, but I don't see him on. Who was it? Someone from State Senator Ben Holman's office. We just let them know that, you all would be coming tonight since he was the, prime sponsor of the legislation in case there was anything that, you know, they wanted to add to the conversation, but I don't see them, in the attendees here.
Because they usually send a rep to the, you know, to the general meeting, you know, should they have a committee to the general meeting. That's where I've had most of the time, the, community rep show up to the general meetings.
Okay, right.
And we have, and there was one Ward 8 in Brooklyn, where the elected official shows up to the committee meeting, except the education committee meeting.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it sounds like, the request at the city council level for, implementing civics courses. And that could be done ahead of time if people decided to embrace that idea, right? Sort of. Regardless of how long it takes or whenever it might happen to change the voting age to 16.
Right. So what my thought bubble is on this is that, you know, our effort is to support the legislation as it actually exists, which asks for the full Monty. You know, that's what we're asking for. But at the same time, my, you know, recommendation would be is to, you know, research Robert Jackson's legislation. And, you know, we're gonna be doing the same thing, you know, urge people to, you know, support that legislation. So it is specifically, let's make civics education in New York real.
I mean, I personally love the idea of getting more young people involved civically. We were talking just before this about participatory budgeting and getting young people involved in just issue areas that they care about to improve their community, whether it's their schools or libraries, parks, and so I've been able to experience like firsthand just sort of how much they can actually add value to those projects and those ideas and thinking about, you know, how can we work together to get something done to improve the community, so I think it's great. Do folks here feel like, so there's there's the state legislation, there's sort of city council resolutions.
Right.
Are you asking for a motion?
Well, I'm wondering about like, how do we feel about like the amount of information that you currently have? Like, do you need more things to review and look at? Do you feel like there are more questions that you all have here that we need answered? Generally, are people feeling like this is something that would be a value of lowering the voting age, or how much sort of, because there's a lot of information here, there's a tremendous amount of work. So just kind of want to get a sense of where we're all, just based on this conversation right here.
Well,
What else do you all need to know?
I have an 18-year-old.
Dun.
I probably would be like the person who's like, I don't know about my son being able to vote, but the truth is, I mean, yeah, can you imagine? He, you remember when he was like 8 years old,
Yeah.
coming to the meeting? And sitting in the back doing homework, trying to do homework. Where was I going with this? I guess basically I would say that I feel conflicted. However, I think the kids who would be voting at 16 are the kids who are more involved and more interested in that, like learning. I think I lean towards, I think it's a good idea overall.
Yeah, and I should point out in the last city elections, the overall turnout rate in the general election was about 22%. Which means only one in 4 or 5.
Wow.
There was involved in electing the mayor of the city of New York.
My goodness, okay.
And I do think what Katie and Wendy were mentioning about going off to college and getting those habits in early are good. So overall, I think it's a good idea. But that's where I stand. I don't know how everybody else feels.
I really like the idea of supporting, the introduction of civics classes back into the school system like that.
Yeah, I'm with that more.
Yeah, well, like, I really, like, I feel like that I mean, I would hope that we could come out strong on supporting that suggestion. I actually, Wendy, I think, you know, your point about getting the habit established early before they go away, because I actually have a son who went out of state for college and could not figure it out for the first presidential election. And I was like, dude, you're like, get over here. So, and it was in a state where it mattered. Whereas here, I think one reason why it feels like maybe a lot of people don't get out to vote is because there's so many more, you know, of one party than the other party here in the city. You're like, that doesn't matter. I'm in the majority party. Somebody else will vote for me. You know what I mean? Like, so I think there is some of that feeling. So to be honest with you, I think sort of the only strong reason to change the voting age is to just so that then if kids are going away or out of state, that they've established it at home before they leave at 18.
You wanna?
You know, so I guess, but I very much would like us, you know, at a minimum to support the civics education piece of it.
The other piece I'd add is that 16-year-olds are very affected by local and state politics, and this is just affects state and local elections, right? And I love the idea that a candidate would have to maybe put a high school on there. I don't know if that's allowed, but whatever, you know. And their campaign stops because 16 and 17-year-olds are heavily impacted by the situation in this city and in this state. And when we talk about poor voter turnout, I like the idea of establishing better civic hygiene and habits for folks. But I also, you know, something we've wanted in the past, younger people on community board to feel like we were hearing their voices. And I think we haven't had much success with that. But I think from a you know, like an electoral perspective, their voices should be heard as well. And I think that, and research shows, and I think anecdotally, it sounds like we all know there's probably not a huge difference between a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old, especially when it comes to
Especially
casting
with
the vote.
boys.
Yeah, go on.
That's recorded.
But being impacted by issues, gun violence.
Gun violence, I mean, but just even budgeting, right? Like we, like what they then have to experience for the last couple of years of high school, you know, for a 16-year-old. I also think just job prospects and, you know, I think for city and state university systems, or whatever, you know, goes on and on and on. And when we talk about people being increasingly priced out of the city and just the increasing challenges that we're facing, 16-year-olds are not immune to that, and they're certainly not blind to it. And I would say, me as a 16-year-old, I would have loved to vote, and I was pretty civically minded, but so many 16-year-olds today, because they're so connected, like there's a world of political TikTok and this and that, like they're very, very, very connected. So, and you know, I'm certainly in favor.
I'm in favor too, and I think the turnout argument is the best argument, and it's pathetic. I mean, we have 3 primaries a year in the city, and I feel like sometimes I'm the only one that goes and votes at them, and the people in this room are the only ones that show up and vote at them.
Thank you.
It's one person, you know, 7 people working, and you see your one neighbor who votes. So, you know, I don't see there being a problem of 100% of the 16-year-olds turning out and swaying the vote. And, you know, I think anything we can do, and if people do have fears that these 16, 17-year-olds are wrong-minded and they're gonna vote for the candidate that's too far one way or the other, then I think that's just, we need to have turnout with the people who are in their 90s to combat that, you know? So. Yeah. I mean, I was just looking at the driver's license laws. I was able to drive the car at 15 in South Carolina where I'm from.
But those are also different skill sets.
Yeah, they are. And here in New York, you can get a permit at 16 or a junior license. It's complicated, but you know, in general, we allow a 16-year-old to drive a 5,000-ton vehicle through our streets. Maybe they could also do some research about candidates and vote.
I just wanted to pick up another point that, what he was saying about schools. I did read, I think, somewhere on the Vote 16 website, one of the arguments was that 16-year-olds may have jobs and never pay taxes. Right, they're paying taxes and not having a say in what's going on.
Yeah, they don't have sexual representation violence.
Right. What
And
each
it's
might.
not just income taxes, but they contribute a lot through sales taxes. And, you know, a lot of teenagers contribute a lot through community service and civic service.
Right,
There's some of the highest rates of community service from any generation, you know, the new generation. So, yeah, they are thinking globally and acting globally.
Yeah.
To a much greater extent. So probably the great generation of World War II.
We're gonna check on, do
Yeah.
have a?
Wait, I'm curious, I'm sorry. No, I wanted to hear what Leslie had to. I don't know, I was curious, what's your thought? I said it was. Well, what do you think? Maybe I wasn't listening. I'm
Oh, that
sorry.
part you didn't say.
No,
Oh,
my
I-
opinion on it, no, Oh, okay, just curious.
I mean, I agree with what the table has said.
Oh,
I was asking if they wanted a motion.
Yeah, we'll hear
That's
maybe
it.
if anyone from the public has anything they want to say.
yeah.
Thank you.
We have someone here who is considering joining the
Yeah.
planning board, so,
Thank you.
wanna say
Sure, I mean, I am a former teacher, middle school, so not 16-year-old, but so I was in my head just now thinking about my kids who were like 12, and I'm like, it's hard to imagine them in 4 years being a shepherd. I think that is a big difference. Those years between like 12 and 16 are seems to be a big jump. But I mean, the thing that comes to my mind is just social media and like, and how that plays a role in politics and in voting in general. And I think it's a really interesting, like, just other part to it, just society as a whole, not just for kids. And so I I was just curious if there's any kind of research connected to social media and Vote 16 and like getting kids to vote and like that, how they find out how to register. And then also if you have any, research or insight on like how they, I don't know, communicate with each other and around politics and stuff like that.
Yeah, so, I mean, the research I've seen doesn't talk about how they communicate with each other, just about the results of the actual turnout results. Which again, they're 4 times greater, and over time, over 10 years, it's still 5% greater. When you compare 16-year-old first-time voters to 18-year-old first-time voters. In terms of the impact of the social media, there's probably a lot more research, and to be honest, I haven't researched that yet. I've seen one reference in the Oosterhoff article I mentioned. And that article, it talks about 18 to 25-year-olds as opposed to 45 to 60-year-olds. And they said 7 times less likely to be misled by false claims on social media.
No,
I think that's a little bit high for me,
I think it's the
but I
opposite.
do see some validity to the point that because they use it so much and they talk to each other, maybe they get a little savvy, about not listening to some of the false media. But this is just speculation on my part. It's just, I haven't done the research.
I mean, I'm just gonna, I think that's a great point what you made about social media, and just not to, but we're in this now in our school with social media, and it's actually the opposite, it's teens are much more, they believe a lot more of what they see on social media, they can't, they can't have to change what's real and what's fake, like.
But I wonder if
It's very, and
difference
it's, well, wait,
between
hold on,
younger
hold on,
teens.
one minute. But that it's sky, and it's like, the gap is huge, like it's not even, and then even adults can't really figure out fake news right now on social media, even adults have problems with that, and they're saying, and ours was more, our talks and our, research that we were looking at was not really towards politics,
Right.
but it was more towards just general,
Yes, yeah,
what
we-
people say on social
Yeah.
media, and they don't realize what's fake, and they're like, is this real? Can this really happen? Even into the teens. Because it's delivered at such a real level, like it's so real when you look at it.
Very sophisticated.
So,
Yeah.
thank you, sophisticated. So it was interesting when you mentioned that was my concern of the whole social
But the
media
other side of the equation is
aspect.
almost 50% of the voting population that voted for unreality. I'm not mentioning any names, it's no politics. So, I mean, that's the other side of the equation, and I was gonna say, I hate to say it, but I don't hate to say it. A lot of the major media is not giving credence so much, but giving publicity, and focusing on what they have to say, to the point that you have to ask yourself, how much of this is becoming normalized? Among 2 large sectors. And used to, in the 1800s, you had something called the Know Nothing Party that believed in these obscure, crazy, theories about people. And they only lasted for 4 years and they were gone. But of course, they didn't have to pretend well on social media that people have to decipher today. So it's a very, very complicated issue, which it may take 20 or 30 years to finally figure out.
We'll take one more and then we'll hear someone from the public wants to comment.
Great, yeah, I just wanted to make one other comparison. I think in general, I'm supportive of this. I also admit that I haven't thought about this for more than the last 30 minutes, so I think it's kind of new to all of us, and we're talking through it, and maybe premature to write a letter one way or the other without learning more about it, but maybe not. But the other reference I wanted to make is this week we had someone who, a 15-year-old who is being charged with an adult. He shot someone in a sporting goods store in Times Square. I'm not have a lot of sympathy with this individual, but it just made me think, like, if you're old enough to go to Rikers, maybe you're old enough to vote.
Yeah, we call it old enough to break the law, but not old enough to make the law.
Yeah.
It's interesting, many years ago, when I was interning in the US Senator's office, I ended up being there when the debate was raging about raising the drinking age and tying it to road legislation. And so there are a lot of people saying, hey, hold on a second, if you're 18 and you can be drafted, then you certainly ought to be able to have a beer. you know. But then when all the research was done and it showed like the unbelievable dramatic difference it made in states where the drinking age was 21 versus states where it was 18 and the number of people dying on the roads. So that's actually, it was sort of using that research and that's how they got the bills passed. And so that's why, yeah, I mean, I think it's just because you can be drafted at 18 doesn't actually mean you get to have a drink.
Right, and
Because you're still a bad driver if you're.
yeah, the argument we use with people is there's a difference between hot intelligence and cold intelligence.
Mhm.
If voting is cold intelligence, you're using cognitive thinking, you're analyzing what you see in the candidates and making a vote. But your individual vote is not affecting anyone else around you. I mean, collectively, obviously, but not individually. This is about the individual right to vote if you're 16 years old. So it's about autonomy and sovereignty.
I want to make a motion. Can I make a motion that this committee makes a letter, supporting, thanking them for coming, supporting the efforts, talk about the civic-minded curriculum element that we think would be good, for younger ages. And I don't know if you want to take a position that CB4 thinks the age should be lowered. I don't know, I'll leave that to you guys if that letter goes to full board, but I would.
But as a committee, that's what we said.
Yeah, we
That's what I mean.
have to vote on
If that's what you want, yeah.
That's-
I mean, if you want that in the letter, I don't know, I'm just saying, I don't know if you
Who
want.
knows what we'll do.
All right,
Yeah.
so who, okay, let's just make a motion. So who,
I need a second.
I'll second one. Let's start with a letter thanking Al for coming and bringing this to us. Also strongly supporting this, idea of mandatory civics classes. I mean, that should be, Robert Jackson's bill. Let's start with that.
Wait, hold on, I thought the mandatory wasn't,
Well, the legislation that's lowering the voting age supports 8 hours of civics training.
okay, no, but it's Gail's bill, or Gail's.
Right,
But
Gail's is,
Hardeman and Carol, Gail supports that bill.
the
Hers is
Gail,
the resolution, the bill is none of it,
My motion was for the state level.
yeah, the state level.
At the state level, okay.
Oh, okay.
and so Senator Jackson's bill is not about lowering the voting age, right? His is
He is a
about,
co-sponsor, by the way, of the.
okay, but this, he has a separate bill that's about making civics classes mandatory, so I think that can we all agree on that? part of it? Okay,
But it sounds like just 8 hours for high school kids, is that right? Is that what the
Right.
bill says?
Yes,
Like,
that's Senator Jackson's bill. That's
No,
the
no,
city-
that's-
Right, the city council, that's,
that's the voting age, but it's the
Yes,
city council of the state,
right,
if you're
right,
talking about vote 16,
yes.
then it has the 8 hours.
So,
of
and you
civics
told
training.
if that's connected
The high
to the
school.
vote,
Yes,
if
it
you
is.
lower the
Yes,
voting age,
yes,
that's.
yes.
Yeah, Robert Jackson is a totally separate.
I think we're
Right.
talking
Yeah.
about, generally, we support
Yeah,
civic.
that's what I'm saying, yes. Generally, we do support that component of it, even,
or that you require, that civic classes should be reintroduced to the.
yes, regardless if
Yeah.
the voting age is on the table or not, like
Yeah.
that should be a
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah,
So then the next component is lowering the voting age or supporting Gail's resolution in city.
The bill.
Well,
It could be the state senator Hoyle's bill, it could be the
Exactly.
resolution, we could figure
right,
out the wording, but generally we support lowering the voting age
Right.
to 16.
right, who's comfortable with doing that?
We
at this
include that
point?
as well. In a.
I'm okay with that. Yep.
Yeah, right, I'm sorry, putting your hands up again.
Yeah.
Oh, if I support lowering the
Yeah.
voting.
You just, we're all, everyone here is supporting lowering the voting age, I just want to get that, okay? You do? Okay, well, it passes then, okay, lowering the voting age, wow.
So to tell my partners, the committee is unanimous, that would be accurate.
Yes,
Well,
yeah, everyone who's here, yeah.
With, yes, yes. Okay.
Now, I know every board is different, some boards, they first go to the executive committee and then the general, others go
Well,
straight.
it will go to full board, so it will be, we'll draft a letter here at the committee, then we'll present to the full board meeting in early March, and then it will be voted on by the full board at that, and then at that point it will pass, or.
Yeah.
So let me do this, because I know sometimes board committee members, to ask for information.
Yes, please leave things, yeah.
I'm not sure if, you received it, so.
There's some stuff in the Dropbox.
There are some things in the Dropbox, there's, copies of the legislation, but we're happy to proceed.
Yeah, let me give it to you just,
Okay.
just in case, as I
Great.
say. And I can just print it out again. No problem.
Thank you so much.
That's it.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you for being, such a welcoming, host, to my presentation and great questions. I mean, you reminded me of stuff I should have said in the first place and you got it back out. So I thank you for that.
Terrific. Okay.
Is it, there's a restroom on the floor?
Yeah,
Yes.
that goes right behind you as well.
Yeah, but yes, on the wall there.
Looking for, which way do we go?
It's by the elevator, I'll take it right.
To the left, all the way down,
By the elevators.
all the way down. Okay, so, great, everyone. So we're now moving on to, a presentation on Infirnity community-based programs at NYCHA. So is Lisa on?
Lisa is on.
Great.
Hey, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Okay, we can, sorry.
You have a presentation, right, Lisa?
I do. I guess I can share screen.
Let's see.
Okay.
Okay, you should be able to share your screen.
And everyone can hear me okay?
You see that? We can hear you.
Perfect. Just gotta say, this camera you guys have for your meetings is very cool. I like a lot. It changes faces, it's very neat. All right, so hi everyone. My name is Lisa Jazanowski. I am the co-founder of Infirnity, which is a nonprofit organization in Chelsea. And we primarily have focused on Elliott, Chelsea, because that's where our family is, where we grew up, and it's our home. So a little background, I'll just get right into it. So I just want to say this quote. When you create an atmosphere where each individual knows what they can give, has a way in which they can activate that giving, and knows that what they give is not only needed, but appreciated, you cultivate a culture of interconnectedness that enables a community to naturally thrive. Creating a structure where things can naturally happen is something I've been very drawn to for a long time. I guess I can consider it like the natural world belief that when you go into the natural world, miracles happen every day, but it's because there's a structure that enables that to light up. So project purpose, the vision is to create this resident-led network that funnels equity into low-income communities by transforming an identity of scarcity into an identity of abundance through community-based programs and events. And the way this is done is that a network of residents, primarily from Elliott, Chelsea in this pilot program, current and former residents would identify their passions and purpose, or passions or a skill set that they're proud of, and then facilitate an ideation and development of a project, a community-based project. And these projects would launch in the summertime. So I'm telling you guys, I can't wait to come back after August and just boom, 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 look what happened this summer, because it's gonna be wonderful. Here, so where does this vision come from? So first, the scarcity versus abundance. From my own experiences, but also just in conversations, in our city at least, when you hear low income or NYCHA, it's always tied to this group of people don't have. This group of people don't have access to. This group of people need this. Scarcity, scarcity, scarcity. The background story is that I grew up in Penn South. I found the love of my life on basketball courts, playing ball in Chelsea, and he brought me into his loving home in Elliott, Chelsea. And for the first time, I don't know, something just clicked for me. I found a community of people that have been growing up with each other for generations. We walked down the block and it was hug, 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 hug. And I'm noticing at this age in my life that I'm drawn to potential. And so I've been tethered to this community ever since I met it, because there's an abundance there. There are gifts and talents, and it just needs to be cultivated. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I consider this part of the vision because, especially with all the talk of demolition and reconstruction, there's no surprise that the NYCHA buildings, physiologically, and safety, those needs aren't being met right now, right? With drugs, water, poo-poo in the poo-poo, sorry, I have my baby. Doo-doo in the elevator, things like that. Yeah, it's still there. It happens, garbage in the hallways. This is the reality. But with new buildings, those safety needs and those physiological needs will hopefully be met. Well deserving. What my focus is on are those top 3 parts of the pyramid. Because the truth is, for generations, this whole pyramid has been lacking. So what structures can also be in place while these changes are happening to increase self-actualization, to increase self-esteem, a sense of respect and recognition for yourself, to increase love and belonging, which are values that enrich a community within this small cohort and then beyond it. And then finally, this project is the result of me going back to school. Woo woo. I'm an occupational therapist, been for nearly a decade. And so I'm going for my doctorate. And it's really tying in OT and bringing it to community-based programming. My mind was blown because it was like my 2 worlds finally coming together. And occupational justice is this beautiful, beautiful, just bold statement that says it is a human right for people to have access to the ability to engage in meaningful occupations, things that are meaningful to them. Because once you engage in things that are meaningful to you, you naturally go for a greater quality of life and health. And there's research to back this up, which is wonderful. Research is great. So originally, when I was creating this program, I was focused on workforce development. And that was kind of going to line with Eric Botcher's West Side Work Coalition, right? Like, let's get jobs, and then I really was kind of being more true to myself, and I was more drawn to a sense of identity and a sense of belonging. The job force is not my expertise, but I will say I do believe I have an expertise in getting to know a person and figuring out a way to make their life more meaningful, which is my occupation. So I'm really figuring out what's the lack of access to meaningful engagement that's occurring, and the reality that when you don't have those opportunities, it can negatively affect your quality of life and therefore alter your occupational choices. Occupational choices being the things that you do every day, but also in workforce as well. So Project Purpose is a 3-tiered program, right? So first I will be meeting with the residents, current and former. I'm choosing 5 to 7 residents, and they will be working with me through an interview process to identify a passion or a skill set that they are proud of. Then there is a 3-month Purpose Hub program where we'll be meeting once a week for an hour a month, because we all have lives, some have babies, we got to keep it real. 1 hour a week is good. And they'll be going through the program to take that passion or that skill and create a community event rooted in that skill set. So not only is the program giving us space to identify what someone cares about, but it's then cultivating an energy of, let's activate it. Let's take that thing you care about and show how we can share it with the community that you are a part of. It provides moments for leadership. It provides moments for interconnectedness. And those are things I'll talk about in a minute. Then finally, there will be, like I said before, after they take the 3 months to cultivate their programs, they will launch them. And these will be community events for Chelsea and beyond, not just for Elliott Chelsea, for all of Chelsea and beyond, led by these residents. And that's kind of an initiative that has never happened before. So the outcome measures, thanks to school, I will be collecting data, which, believe it, even though I've been a nonprofit for so long, my goodness, no data. All right, so now I'm ready. So there's 4 primary outcomes. The first one is to learn will the participants learn how to develop their own community event and program? So right out there, through this program, we're now expanding the knowledge base of really, I'm so sorry, that's my family. Of really knowing how to execute and network in community. And from my own experience, those are things that you don't know how to do unless you do it. Were the participants able to create a community event or program that was grounded in their passion or skill? The third outcome measure was the participant able to utilize their skills to provide a service to the community? And finally, Did the participants feel a new sense of accomplishment and purpose in the community that they provided a service to? I do have a sustainability plan for this program, and these are the areas. I believe that Project Purpose has the potential to be identified as one of the only programs in Chelsea that cultivates resident-led projects and events for the greater community. And that's really big for me, especially with all the changes happening. 2, I really believe that this has the chance to strengthen Chelsea's community's interconnectedness by cultivating positive interactions and new ways for the residents to engage one another. We sometimes are able to integrate naturally and sometimes not, but by new programming and more events happening by residents, all of a sudden it just transforms the face and gives people a chance to share where they're from. The third one is I am going to have a whole slew of evaluations, thank you school, and assessments that will constantly be improving and developing the program material, especially for the Purpose Hub. And finally, it's a cost-effective program. So there's a big output. So with only 5 to 7 participants in each cohort, you have 5 to 7 community events that are going to be launched. And that's a really big turnout. So right now, this program is in full partnership with the Hudson Guild, whoop, whoop, Mr. Ken Joggers, thank you. And also Spark the Brain. So these 2 men on the side, this is George Marfo and Brandon Dietz. And these 2 guys are current and former residents of Elliott Chelsea. And this is the whole purpose of what's happening. They are starting a media company and they will be creating a docuseries of the participants and just creating a nice fun way to document the process. The friends, we have Darlene Waters. Go ahead, Darlene. The Tenants Association of Elliott Chelsea, they are on board. Cambio Labs, I don't know if you know them, but they're a pretty new organization that is focused on social entrepreneurship. So we're trying to see if maybe this program can be a pipeline for residents that are interested. Eric Botcher, Coolios. Avenues World School is a friend, they support the program. Little Island, met with Michael Higgins and he supports, and Jeff Corral is a friendly supporter of us for a long time. Our funding, I will be applying to the Westside Community Fund, Torrey University, which is the university I'm attending right now, Citizens Committee of New York. I love that organization, and private donations. So why am I coming to see you? Well, first, when I met with Mr. Botcher and Hannah Moses, they strongly encouraged me to talk to you, and I was so happy. It was a great idea. But really just sharing this means the world. So thank you for your time. I really want to create a community resource hub, which is an initiative where, yes, programs thrive off of monetary donations, but I really believe that the more we're able to cultivate a network of resources, that we can do more in the community that we are in. And what I mean by this, oh, I'm sorry, my family is locked out the door. I'm sorry. I didn't know I locked it. Hi, baby. Okay, come on. Sorry, everybody.
Problem.
I opened the door. Okay. Do you want to say hi real quick? Hi. Hi. Okay. Mommy will be right up. Give me 1 second. Hi, bye. Oh, there he goes. I'm sorry. So for the Community Resource Hub, the idea is that when a resident has this vision and they're forming their community event, instead of going to Amazon and clicking that cart, they will learn the network that Chelsea offers. So maybe the Hudson Guild has the cones that you need for your event, or maybe the church has the tables and chairs, and they'll be able to cultivate instead of having to buy things. I would love any advice you guys have on grants or community networks that you think would be interested in this initiative. And I would love to just invite you to the events that we're going to host this summer. They'll be launching in July through August, surmounting to our annual block party that'll happen on August 17th. And that's all I got. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Appreciate the presentation and congrats on going back to school.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Questions from the committee?
No, it sounds like a really interesting idea, and the idea of really keeping it focused on that group, that area, especially when there's so much change going on, sounds really exciting. So good for you. And certainly, you know, on our CB4 website and on our calendar and stuff, once there are dates for the various events, you should let Jesse know, our district manager, because he can definitely put them up and include them on our calendar and stuff, and we would be happy to advertise that.
Thank you. I will.
Really cool.
And I'd have the same suggestion for the Community Resource Hub. I think that's an amazing idea. So once that's up and running, sharing that with Jesse, so we can make sure we're getting the word out, because obviously the more people who know about it, the more resources get added to that. But fantastic work.
Awesome. Thank you guys. I will.
Lisa, I have some thoughts or questions. When do you actually graduate? When do you get your doctorate?
I get it right after the program. So I get to walk in June, and then the beginning of September, I get my degree in the mail.
Very nice.
Thank you.
So I do love the idea of the program, and I want to share that I'm co-chair of Housing, Health, and Human Services, and my grandmother lived there at 466 West 25th. So I was born and raised on and off living there. So I loved it. I'm curious about your long-term vision for this. Let's say ideally 10 years out, what would it look like?
I hope you guys don't mind saying I'm a huge faith walker, so I'm learning how to speak out loud on it. So my nonprofit has been wonderful, but I really believe it has the ability to be the new core of our organization. So I would love for the nonprofit to be completely resident led. And this has the structure so that programs and events and everything happening within it could all be within the community that it started from. And it just creates a sense of pride, a sense of belonging, whether you still live there or not. And that's my dream. Beyond that, I have 2 babies that you saw, one of them, they're 1 and 2 now. So I'm really dedicated to creating a community that thrives on that love that I've been so drawn to. So I want to build this for them more than anything.
And do you envision it growing larger than it is? So not only for Chelsea Outlet, but for other housing developments?
Definitely for other housing developments, but also as I reflect on my own experiences. I've been a pediatric OT for about 9 years. I find that this has the potential to go into certain workforces. I think we all work in an establishment, but if every job could also have a little niche where people could step into something else that they love to do, I think jobs would really be empowering places and way beyond, and create a culture of growth in many different ways. So there's a lot of visions I have on where it can go, for sure.
Okay, good. And I have one more question, because in my mind, when I think of OT, like an occupational therapist, I'm thinking of like movement. But like, or learning to write well, like my fine motor skills or gross motor skills. So I'm just missing the connection between your passion and OT work.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked that. So OT, the word occupation is all about doing, right? So OT is creating paths for people to be functionally independent. And so while you take that into the health field, where it's in the school with fine motor skills or sensory integration and regulation, or rehab facilities, once you bring that into the community effort, it's about how do you use the task of occupation to uplift and enable people to have more fulfilling lives. And that's the big link that is actually a big discussion in our field, and not everyone is on board, but it's a big discussion that I'm stepping into now.
And is that the occupational justice thing that I saw on one of your slides?
Yes.
But I couldn't read the words, but.
Yes, so occupational justice is tied to that, but what you were asking was more so like just in essence, like how does OT connect to this type of work at all? And it's rooted in the concept of action and being able to the meaningful activities. So OT is always rooted in what's meaningful to someone. So if I do handwriting, it's because it enables me to do XYZ. It's not just I want to learn how to write. So occupations are opening doors for people to enable themselves to activate a different piece. So for this program, I'm targeting what's meaningful to you. How does that transform into an occupation, what you like to do? And then how do we cultivate that into sharing it with others and making that an easeful process? Because I really believe communities thrive when we're naturally able to activate that.
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
hope that answers your question. Sorry.
That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else from the committee? Just any questions?
No, I think it all sounds fantastic, and we will certainly include whatever information you want us to on our newsletter, that we get that out. You know, we've got a pretty big circulation going, so please keep us informed on everything happening during the summer. And I think your program is going to be very much needed right now. We're about to actually talk about all of the changes that may or may not be going forward. But anyway, there's just a lot happening. So we're about to talk about that. So that's such a great lead into that. Thank you so much, Lisa. It was great meeting you. And I hope to meet you in person at one of these events.
Yes, I look forward to the summer event.
Yeah.
You gotta let us
I'm
know
gonna hold
in
you to
advance.
it. I'm gonna hold you to it. I want to meet your mama. No, but thank you guys. And just thank you for always meeting, you know. I just hope I see you guys. I see you. So thank you.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
Good to see you, Lisa.
Bye.
Thank you.
bye.
Okay.
All right, so the next item on our agenda is to talk about NYCHA. And so I hope you all had a chance to take a look at the notice of intent and the EIS that was issued about the Chelsea Elliott and Bolton Household redevelopment plan. It's a major document. There's a lot there. Our sort of mandate as a committee is to think about what are the comments that we would like to be issued that relate to schools, education, cultural programming within sort of the analysis that will be undertaken as part of this redevelopment plan. So each committee.
Can I just ask a quick
Sure.
question? Because so I couldn't tell, is it just thinking about like from an environmental inspection or environmental perspective that we're supposed to be thinking about our questions right now? Or like the last question that you proposed was about, you know, might there be room for PS 33 in the building somewhere? And I was like, well, that's not really a environmentally related question, or maybe I guess maybe we could figure out a way that it could be. But like, I wasn't sure, are we supposed to be thinking about it just like development, this project generally and how it impacts schools and culture issues? Or just right now focused on the environmental impact statement stuff?
So right now, this is the very beginning of the process. So we really want to try to generate as many ideas as possible
Okay,
to
good.
sort of be included
Okay.
in what should be studied.
Okay,
So it doesn't have to be so narrowly focused on sort of like environmental considerations.
okay, oh, good.
So everything will get folded into this umbrella of things that we want to be included in this, in a statement that is from the
Awesome.
board.
Great.
So just one thing, so all the committees will be taking sort of their comments. They'll be put together to Chelsea Land Use, February 20th, they'll be compiled, and then there will be a larger letter sent out on behalf of the board.
Just don't think of it as environment, as in like
Air
environment.
quality.
Yeah, it's environment as in everything, like the
Yeah.
environment we live in, yeah, like.
Yeah.
It's like
Ah,
environment, so I just want to, I know environment, means like green energy, but it's more you're like living.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay.
And one of the things that was mentioned at the full board was, because I really like this, and maybe it was Jessica, maybe you said it, I don't know, someone said it, it's like, if it's not included, we can't complain about it later.
Uh-huh.
Right? So there's no such thing as a bad idea at this point. I think we really just wanted to hear what people thought. Josephine and I did have an initial conversation to kind of start brainstorming a little bit. Talked about sort of school enrollment and the impact of creating new housing that would have within the community. Looking at some of the environmental concerns as it relates to construction and demolition, what that means to the air quality, what it means to noise, in particular to the schools that are really adjacent to the development site, which really is quite a few schools, but PS 33 is really right next door to a lot of the housing developments at Chelsea Elliott. And traffic flow as well on 9th Avenue, what that would mean. And yeah, as you brought up, the school facility for PS 33, which is an old school, has a lot of capital needs, and is there an opportunity here to get a new school out of this project? So that's sort of where we started. We would love to hear comments from everyone else and start compiling these ideas.
I had an internal meeting today with Jessica, Joe, Carrie, and Jeffrey. And just, they wanted me to remind this committee that they need the comments by, I would say before the clue meeting.
Yeah,
Before the
okay,
land use meeting, which is
no
March
problem.
20th.
Thank you.
And the way Jesse mentioned it to me about this document, the draft scope of work, that was helpful for me, was thinking about, this is the skeleton. And like, we're sort of adding meat to it, and like what we want explored
Mhm.
or studied or looked into. And that was helpful for me.
Yeah, it's great. Also, Hector on the board is also looking at some of the community facility space, so we can connect with him and just make sure, you know, we're not, where there's overlap, we just start coordinating. all
Right,
that
the one
stuff.
person that we haven't been able to speak to, by the way, it was Superintendent Kelly who floated the idea about the school, which I thought was a fabulous idea. They could even build it into potentially, well, but let me just back up for a second, because we actually don't know what's happening yet, right? Nothing has been written in stone, but it's out there, and so I don't, you know, when I talk about this, I don't want, you know, the board hasn't taken a position on this, right? Whether the demolition should go through at all, or should be a partial demolition, so I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, this is
Don't
not
make
an
out-
endorsement.
Right, this is not an endorsement at all.
Right.
Our job is just to, we've got this notice of intent, we have to reply to it. So we're just putting all those asks in there. So there was a school, PS 150 in Lower Manhattan, that was actually built into a condo building, and it's a beautiful space. The condos are actually not even open, but the school is open. And it used to be a tiny little school, now it's moved down there, so it's like 8 floors, it's, there are gonna be 3 grades, 3 classes per grade. So, you know, if something like this has to happen, at least give an opportunity for a school like PS 33, which is just according to our superintendents, in bad shape, and so that would be, definitely an ask. And I was also thinking about maybe some cultural spaces, because we have been talking about this for a while in this committee, about having more rehearsal theater spaces. A space where several nonprofits maybe could share this space, so maybe building something into Hudson Guild. And I was hoping that we could get, Wilson Kano here, but I don't think he's here, right? Yeah, I don't think he was able to attend, to talk about the needs for Hudson Guild. So when we're talking about this, I don't know, you may know more about Hudson Guild and like, what could we build into it from? You may be doing something on your end with your committee, but I just want to make sure, because they've got a pre-K center in there, they've got all these different things, so, even if we can't, you know, we don't put enough in there tonight, I can always go back to Ken Joggers and ask him, you know, what else can we add, because I don't want to forget about them, that's an important resource for this community.
So should we just go around? Do people want to kind of?
Yeah.
You got, good. I love it. Well, yeah.
So I've been kind of following this by attending some of these meetings, but so, how does this committee, I guess, play a part in the decision? It goes to the full community board?
In which part of the decision,
I guess-
you know, our asks?
So, so right now you guys are determining your asks and what you want to know more about the plan.
Yeah, we want certain things to be studied in the plan. So
We wanna
right now
add
there's
to the
gonna be NYCHA and I think maybe HPD is involved, but anyway, the city is issuing an environmental impact to sort of look at various aspects of this project and what should be included as they sort of start this process. So they're taking public comment on that right now this month. So we want to make sure that comments from the board are incorporated into that.
And is it up to the broader board or anyone in this room, like whether or not it's got the Fulton House getting demolished or the related?
That's not what we're taking.
Right, at all. I mean, at
Yeah.
some point, the board may be, take a position on it, but we're certainly not doing that right now. This notice of intent that we got for full demolition, came as a real surprise to us, quite honestly. For years, for about the past 6 years, we've been talking about this RAD, right? Maria knows a lot about this because Maria's co-chair of the housing committee, and her committee's been working on this for years and years. And so this whole thing about full demolition just came really as a surprise. We're all still learning about it. We're going to all these meetings, and we've been asked to give these comments. So we're kind of in the dark like you are,
Okay,
basically.
I just wanted to understand.
Yeah, right. So, okay, but the way I see it though is that, this reconstruction, this is government. I mean, these whole campuses were designed to support, to be partially supported by the government, I guess, is the way of saying it. So I feel like a lot of that should remain public spaces, even though they're talking about coming back with some market rate units, affordability plus the nitro. So what can the public get out of this as well? That's really important, I think, for us. And so the school would be one, an arts center, another.
And Leslie has.
But
Well, I just think we should also think, because a lot of people go into these thinking that building wise, because it's
Right.
but if we remember, they're also gonna be managing this property.
Yes,
And it's their obligation to manage this property, not only for their market rate people, but for public housing. That's the whole point, and that's kind of a little bit of the, I guess, consternation that, how they're gonna manage, and that's a bigger, broader conversation that we're not gonna take up. But I think we should ask for them to study a lot. I think there should be a free daycare center, 100%. I think that
Our lists may,
anyone on campus should, and they should provide that, and they should staff it. I mean, this is like hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. The things that we are going to ask for are a drop in the bucket as far as, yearly maintenance for this. So I'm already.
Let's hear it.
promoting the free daycare center, a mini library on campus, absolutely, that they staff.
Sorry, when you say mini library, I'm just.
Doesn't say mini, a library.
Oh, okay.
Like a library, somewhere like and it could be coupled with Hudson Guild, it could be a separate, facility, but.
It might be out.
I don't know, just a resource with a book, yeah, it could be a near public library, like a satellite, maybe a satellite. Near
Okay.
public library there, just to give this campus and the public housing part of it access to
Yep.
these things, that easy access.
Right.
After school programs, I'm not talking about Hudson Guild, I'm talking about the ones that we ask for. When we ask for our public schools,
yes.
they should be providing the same thing, in these spaces, public, after-school programs. And I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I have like little things, but that's pretty much the main ones as far as the asks from related. And, what they're, as far as the management component.
Right.
I know, like, we discussed this on WPE, I mean, we're gonna ask for a lot, there's a lot, we're asking for rooftop gardens and all, that type of stuff, but as far as for education and arts, it would go along those lines.
So are you saying after-school programs not necessarily connected to PS 33? You're just
Correct.
saying in part, right?
Oh, no,
But
but
then
students
they
who
have
live there.
In there.
Yeah, we live there,
Got it.
exactly, that there's some sort of, which I guess would be the adult daycare,
Yes,
type of,
yes.
component of it.
Thank you. That could lead to a lot of jobs. For
100%.
Can I just go around?
Thank you.
I think I need to go last.
Okay.
so I also had after-school programs and daycare on site. I would just say that for after-school programs, I think it should be middle school and high school. And I think it should include a gym. Cause, having a program but no space to actually do it, and maybe a field as well. I mean, that's always a huge issue, is like, where are sports gonna play, you know, so having a field for the after-school programs to play, I think would be great. But I would also add, a senior, like, drop-in day center for the seniors who live there. And then the only other thing that I had that's sort of unrelated to specific on-site programming is just a question. I don't know how we ask it, but I think similar to some of the things you had already put in the list, but it's sort of just ask about or identify as an issue school disruption for current students who might have to move, right? We want to make sure that they're not going to have, that their seat in their school would be protected, or that even if they have to move somewhere else or they're relocated for a little while, that doesn't mean that they lose their seat at their school.
Right, yeah, I think we can certainly keep that out, because in the way that it was really about how are you going to accommodate the 3,500 new families or individuals that they're in the school system, but on the other side, what happens with is there a possible displacement because of the work that's happening, and would they lose a seat because of?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if they're told like, oh, you know, you're gonna have to move somewhere else for a little while, like.
Right.
But what about?
Insurance.
Yeah.
Charlie?
Have we talked about improvements at Chelsea Park? I mean, that's maybe not our committee.
You can tell me, because it's our list.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's right in the
Yeah.
middle of all this, and I know that there've been recent improvements there, and you guys have talked about that park a lot, but there's so much open space within the NYCHA campus there, and can some of it be incorporated in the park or expand the park?
Right.
You know, additional, I mean, I'm thinking about with PS 33 too, thinking about PS 111, like that great outdoor playground that's huge, that's also a community benefit, because it's open on the weekends. A community benefit outside of those who attend the school. And then I would just second the library, just looking on Google Maps, you got Columbus Library and Muhlenberg Library, and it's kind of a library desert unless I'm missing one.
No, you're right. Yeah. When it was
There's
brought
difference
up,
in library, but it's still.
That's further, yeah, just the far west side doesn't have much.
that WPE, Chelsea Park was brought up in the context of what's gonna, will the construction and demolition have an impact of the playing field? Like, will people be able to use the field or not?
Or
Like,
they use it as like a staging.
will the fields be closed or in construction? I mean, this is like,
Yeah.
major construction, so, you know, what is gonna happen to folks, like, can they be prioritized or receive permits to other fields so those activities can continue to happen if those parks are gonna be closed? And I brought up the Chelsea Rec Center, which is on the other side on 25th Street. You know, I don't know if there's gonna be an impact on the swimming pool that's there. But yeah, I think it's good to think about not only what happens during construction, but post-construction. Let's make sure we're getting a much better parking now.
From the notice of intent, I believe, it's, my recommendation is to include in the study an impact on local businesses. So in the notice of intent, it says that there will not be any direct displacement of businesses. There's no need to study them. And then it also mentions like there would not be an indirect impact as well, but the indirect one in particular felt a little flimsy to me, because it was basically talking about like market saturation and whatnot. So I'd include that into the study, because we're talking about a multi-year construction project, likely to have some impact on local businesses. And then I agree with all the other great suggestions, reiterate the need for green space, and I would say smart use of the rooftop spaces would be my recommendation there, to include a well-sized bike rooms, so we can have a safer space for folks to do their bikes. I'm not sure, and I wasn't able to read all of this, I don't know if this is already potential planning stages, but to make the entire building, or at least most of it, fully accessible to folks who are in wheelchairs or have other, some accommodations for other needs. Making sure these buildings are wired for high-speed internet, if it's a wish list, throw in free wireless internet as well, but I recall during the pandemic that a lot of students were having challenges with.
In the older
internet
buildings,
access.
yeah.
And then, again, I don't know if this was included, but I would make sure this would be a LEED certified green building.
When you're saying buildings, what buildings are you talking about?
Anything that, either
Anything
whether,
that's built.
anything that's built, so whether it's a renovation or whether it's ground up. Yeah. To me, some of these things are table stakes at this point.
So some of those things you mentioned have to be, like, you're right,
Legally.
they legally have to be done. Yeah, like lead, which is good, but I'm glad you said about the bike room, because I said that at WP,
Yeah,
an indoor bike storage room.
Also
Yeah.
keeping in mind, a lot of people in the buildings might have e-bikes and be delivery drivers,
I was just
like
thinking
safe charging where.
Yeah,
Yeah.
charging,
Yeah.
EV charging for both bikes, and there has to be a replacement of the parking that's lost. So EV charging stations.
Yeah, it seems odd, like, and, but I don't know enough about it, but it seems like the number of parking, like, is very low.
Right,
Like, very, very low compared to the number. So I do think there should be.
They complain about, Niger complains about that a lot, like,
Yeah.
people there complain about that.
That,
All commercial parking.
Yeah,
But they have 95.
I think they're thinking,
Parking
no, I think
spots.
someone is
The proposed plan
asking
creating
to
95.
actually go underground for the park, so like not to lose space, like your smaller footprint,
Or I
but
guess-
more.
I guess I'm saying that not to just protect the small number that they have right now, but to see if it can be expanded.
Different,
Oh.
yeah, I mean, yeah.
I think underground parking is the way to go, because we want to protect the green spaces.
The proposed plan is 96, and there's 95 parking spaces.
Yeah,
So
right?
why not?
It's such a small number for how many people who live
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
It's,
I mean, that's it.
over 2,000 units.
It's gonna be a lot, right?
I would put those zero parking spaces, but that's.
So I had two questions before, I read my list. So what is sub-district 3? Does anyone know?
Sub-district,
Yeah. It's on page 33 under public schools, and it
You're
mentioned
getting very,
granular, I know,
Yes.
but I asked somebody else, they didn't know either. But they talk about the district, I know we're in District 2, but it said sub-district 3.
It's right above us on the other side, but it's not us.
Yeah, sub-district, I don't know what that means.
I know.
And intermediate school, does that include high school?
No,
Yeah.
it's another word for middle school, yeah.
Okay. So I was writing down some of the things that were said already. I'm gonna say it anyway, because some of these ideas I already had and some additional things, which the daycare also, I think it needs to be explored if there needs to be more seats in schools in the study area, which I also think should be expanded.
Mhm.
I think they need to explore if we need additional high school seats. If they're saying they're just gonna look at elementary and intermediate, I think they also need to look at high school, but maybe they don't because that's not based on where you live. But if we could throw that in there, I think we should explore it anyway. The mini library, I like the idea, but what I like more is the mini library and have computer lab. I think that's really
Yes.
what's critical.
I don't know why I said
I
mini.
love that.
Just say library.
Public library. And because I can't recall where the closest library actually is, even though it probably says
it's
it.
probably Bloomingdale.
That's on 23rd, right?
Yeah.
That's by the one train, yeah. So yeah, definitely having a computer lab there. The other thing is the after-school program and space. I was thinking, maybe that means, well, this is not really, I'm just gonna say it anyway. I think that it means funding for Hudson Guild. Maybe they need to provide funding for Hudson Guild, including, I think the Hudson Guild should be moved to a permanent space and not to a temporary space, and like kind of figuring out how that could be, because thinking about the disruption to all the programming that exists there.
We need a permanent space in Chelsea to remain somewhere. Yeah,
Instead of
right.
But you don't want to,
relocating
you want to
them.
keep them on campus.
But if they are relocating, where is the relocation? I think it should remain on campus, but I think ideally, we have the space for you, and here, this is where you're going, and it's on the campus,
Yeah.
right? The other thing I'm thinking is, the nonprofit I think they need to explore more about, oh, this is not really us, this is really housing and health and human services, never mind. You mentioned it about the families being relocated and if they're going to different schools, so that was something that it's actually mentioned, they would have to relocate 120 households. But I don't know how many people that is, like, we don't know how many children that is, we don't know where they would be relocated to. Does that mean, you know, how close are they to school, right? And somebody mentioned more senior programming, I think you did, I think that's a good idea too. And Hudson Guild can also do that. And I know that Penn South has a senior program, but they receive more funding for their senior programming than the Hudson Guild does. And I don't remember how many units are at Penn South versus Fulton and Chelsea Elliott. Yeah, it's really Elliott, Chelsea, but I always mix it up. But thinking about if there is gonna be more senior programming, that I think that means the Hudson Guild also, if I'm thinking about what's in the community and where seniors can go. But I don't know like how to frame that in terms of studying. I'm thinking about that more. Some of these are really asks. I don't know how you study some of these things, but
That's up to them.
yeah.
Right.
We're just saying, we want to use space,
Right.
and actually. And I don't even know if you have to tie to Hudson Guild. I think we could just say, we think that there should be, you know, senior day center space.
Yeah, I don't know.
Will have to be made full, just given they're gonna be losing
100%,
the
yeah.
senior center.
Yeah.
Their theater at both campuses.
Yeah.
But it's going beyond that, it's such a huge structure.
And I was just gonna throw out there also that like all of these comments, like we're getting into land use and they're gonna figure it out in their letter, but and how it should be framed, but those are the things that I have.
Wait, actually, can you just say that again, Matt? Because now I'm confused. Wait,
So every building is being demolished,
right,
which includes Hudson Guild's facilities, which is the senior center at Fulton. The Fulton campus, the senior center.
okay,
They have a pre-K early childhood center on 26th Street. They have a theater in the, community center.
Theater and 26 and things.
Everything.
Yep.
Yeah, everything.
but,
So,
but isn't
That's
the,
the plan.
but, but isn't the plan to then replicate that somewhere else in the facility,
Yes, that's a proposed plan.
right? So we don't have to ask for it.
Well, no,
No,
yeah,
no,
we
no,
have to
it's
ask.
not gonna be
We have to
replicated,
put it
it's,
in there.
they're treating it like a whole new campus type of thing.
Right.
Okay,
And so what do, since we're starting from scratch, what do we want, since we
Okay.
can build
So I
really
think-
whatever kind of.
So then,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I think that,
Better.
because I guess we haven't said it yet out loud, but my God, we definitely want the theater space to be, you know, there to be a theater space available for the Hudson Guild
That's
and
a good one.
others, you know, so we.
And maybe larger theater, maybe they need it larger, since there's gonna be so many more people on these campuses.
2 theaters, Black Box and a Belgium.
No, now I'm getting fancy. But yes, we definitely need to include theater and then, yeah, I guess we already said the daycare and then the senior care.
Yeah. And since this is a 18-year project or 20-year project, I definitely want them to look at the drop in enrollment, as to say, if families are displaced, what's happening with those spots? I mean, yeah.
And frankly, and hopefully, I mean, it's really hard to say to a kid, oh, I'm so glad you were here through second grade, but kiddo, off you go. Like, hopefully, wherever that kid goes, they're going to third grade there too, you know what I mean, like.
Yeah, that brings me to an important point, because I don't know like where to have this conversation, if it belongs here or with Maria's Human Services, and I'm gonna come to a meeting next week, but
Good, thank you.
you know, the effect of the
Oh, yeah,
displacement
you're
on
right.
families, like that is part of the environment that we're talking about, the pollution in the air, this and that. But we're really, I don't know how to put it in a statement. Where's the study on that? The potential displacement of families and the loss of culture for this area, because that's another huge component.
Yeah, I think human services
Right.
So I think what she said before, what they were saying that, and just me, so it's kind of like what WPE did and what we're doing with Port Authority as well, is we do a wish list. Right, and like and all the concerns, wishes, concerns, and then it goes to, right, it'll go to land use. And they're gonna write the big letter. And they're gonna have all WPE's concerns, they're gonna have this committee's concerns, and they're gonna form a huge letter, which will then go to right full board.
Yeah,
So
so-
we're not writing a letter from this committee, but I think it's gonna be incorporated in like a full
Yeah.
ask.
And certainly, I think there will be a lot of overlap, but if there's some committees
Yeah.
likely won't be thinking about PS 33 as much as we.
Right.
So those are the sort of things that, you know, I think we've got that perspective that we should be bringing to the.
And you said in, your list, when you two spoke, you mentioned PS 33 and
And all
the
the-
noise pollution, right?
Yes.
That's one.
Yeah, no, yeah, like the timing of when construction's gonna happen, right? Like,
Right.
likely gonna happen, well, who knows when.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean-
Usually it happens I mean, it can't happen during school hours, but
Construction?
yeah, they won't be able to do construction when school possession.
What are you talking
Oh,
about?
let's say, yes, they will.
Yes, they will. They can
No, you can't.
Not on the school itself, but they can around it.
legally?
I guess that's true. Oh, right, I'm thinking about on the school.
You might be
itself.
thinking, yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, they definitely
Oh, yeah,
can be
yeah.
across the street. and-
So during the day, like disruptions, yeah, school time and school session, yeah,
And the proposed plan says it would be done by like 2040.
yeah.
it's critical. Well, it was
So
right,
it's
it's funny.
mostly on the weekends, and we're talking 20,
Yeah.
80 at this point, so, right, I imagine that they will be doing construction during school hours, but maybe, the building that's adjacent to it, and maybe not that one, because how can kids study, also the air quality, what they're breathing in on growing bodies, I mean, this is terrible, we already have such high rates of asthma, I can't imagine the dust and.
And the noise of the machine.
You know, I'm sorry.
I was just saying, are there plans for PS 33 right now? And is it, they're just gonna change the entire neighborhood surrounding the school and not touch it? Is the current plan?
That's why we're doing it in the study.
Yeah.
because,
But I-
Yeah.
I wonder if we should say something, I mean, I know this is sort of random and specific, but like, we think that air purifiers and whatever, HEPA filters or something should all be,
Mitigation.
provided in every classroom at the
That's a good
school.
idea. Especially if it's construction happening.
Um, And also, Matt, to a point you made a little while ago about the fact that fields might be impacted. I remember, when my kids attended for elementary school, a school on the Lower East Side, a city but. And they're right by the East Park, the parks on the East River. And there was some sort of construction happening after my kids had left. They were like, oh yeah, we're just gonna have to close all the fields, and there are a bunch of fields. We're just gonna have to close them for 3 years, no big deal. And the whole community was like, you're gonna close them all for 3 years? Like, that just can't be your plan, because all of the schools in the area use those fields. You can't close them all at the same time for 3 years. And so I think that is something that we really should say, like no joke. And the idea that like, oh, maybe they can just go to some fields nearby, all fields are already like, super on demand. So I do think we have to say like, for the kids, for the recreation, all the teams, everything, you cannot close, if you have to close one at a time or whatever, but you cannot close or deprive access to all fields, or even the majority of them for long periods of time.
I think they don't, like, there is no plan, right? They're not even starting, I mean, there's no construction plan, there's nothing, it's zero. But I think you make a good point, is when you do put your plan together, these are the things you should just keep in mind to incorporate in the plan.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Did
We
you
can
have-
see, yeah, I was actually gonna see,
did you want to add?
There's anyone from the
Yeah,
public?
there's someone from the public right now.
Yeah.
So that's like really, I think it's important.
I just want to give an opportunity to anyone who's joining us online. Anyone from the public who would like to speak on this topic? No, looks good.
Great.
So this is great. So we'll compile this together and then we'll shoot it off to well before the 20th. And we'll get a big letter out on behalf of the board on this. So thank you all. And if there's other things that you think of, don't hesitate to email and let us know. We'll add to the list.
And also, you had said that you're gonna come to HHH.
Yes, yes.
It's this week. Isn't it? It's this Thursday.
Thursday, yeah, sorry,
Okay.
yes, yes.
And you said next week, I'm like, wait,
Okay.
one of us is not gonna be in the right place.
This is open to the public, right, because you're doing it.
We're doing it at either the Hudson Guild or the Cultural Center. I can't recall. Where are we doing?
It's Mother Prairie Council?
So just 1 second, sorry, it
No.
looks like someone does have
Wait,
Mike.
This is open to the public though, your meeting, I just wanted to know.
Thursday, yeah, it's our
Yes.
committee meeting.
Yes, your committee, okay.
Yeah.
Right. All right, you have,
It looks like Mike, you have your hand up, so I am bringing you over. Let's see, okay, Mike, can you, I think we should be able to hear you.
Hudson Guild.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, quick question, not on this topic. That's the only reason why I waited till the end. A few months ago, there was mention at the end of the meeting, I thought I heard that Tamara is no longer at the shed. Does anybody know if, whether she is or is not? And if not, who
she's no
replaced
longer
her?
with the shed, you're right, Mike, she's no longer with the shed.
Okay, does anybody know who replaced her or have contact information for that person?
They actually have not filled her role. The team is still there, but I could connect you with a person. We have one person that we're gonna be inviting on the board, inviting to one of our future meetings, but is there, would that be fine? Do you want me to have Jesse connect you with that person?
Yeah, whoever at this point, I would just like to know, because I had started a conversation with Tamara over a few months, and then now I heard she's gone, so I just wanted to try to pick up where I left off if possible.
Okay, terrific. Then I will get the person's contact name, and I think Jesse may have your information. Jesse Bodine, our district manager?
Yeah, I'd sent Jesse an email a couple of months ago, but I didn't hear back from that one. I usually hear back, but I did not hear back from him that time.
Yes, okay. So I'll definitely follow up
Okay.
with him, and we'll get you someone over there.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
Okay,
Mike.
sure.
Any other new business? All right,
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second,
thanks everyone.
can we vote with our feet?
Thanksgiving.
And the meeting on Thursday is at Hudson.
Yes, yes.